Hey everybody, this is Amy with Ask a Christian, and we're going live a couple minutes early just so the stream can start pinging people. And also, I am all alone here by myself. Pastor Mark is doing another study with teens hiding away somewhere, and so I know he'll get in here a little bit later. But so thrilled to have you spending your evening with us. If you want to skip the small talk, you'll want to skip ahead 2 or 3 minutes because I'll start with the review then. But I did just want to welcome you and thank you guys for some of the notes you sent me this week, asking questions, getting into some of the particulars of his history and how they correlate with the beasts. And yes, I want to say there are some other interpretations of the beasts in Revelation 13. So I got a couple of notes about how some of you think it's China, some of you have other ideas. So I just want to let you know, I'm open to hearing that. I really want you guys to tell me what you think. And this stuff that I'm teaching, it's definitely not just my ideas. There's scholars that have thought this for centuries. So, but I just want to let you know that I am all in when it comes to studying, figure that out. And I just really appreciate you hanging out with us. So welcome. I see 4 of you already on. Thanks for joining us. In the back room today, we've got Fiona and Zavai and Kara who will help see your comments and comment back to you. Just want to let you know that that is my email address under my little picture post there. And I want you to email me. I want you to let me know what's going on. And I see Mark in his office changing his shirt from his bright orange grocery drive shirt. He's been doing groceries today. Now he's putting on a blue checkered shirt. Don't worry, he has an undershirt underneath. He is not flashing the world or anything. Mark, people are calling to see biceps. He says, no, that's not a part of this show. That's a different one. He does that later on. Just kidding. He's not that kind of guy. But yeah, we're feeling casual tonight. Yeah, thumbs up if you want to see Mark's biceps. No, just kidding. Don't do it. Don't do it. All right. So let's kick it off with a word of prayer since Mark wasn't here and I didn't ask him earlier, and I hate putting things on people last minute. I'm going to open us up with prayer, and then we are going to do a 3-slide review of what we looked at last week. Let's pray. God, we recognize that we are not here by accident, that everybody within the sound of my voice and who might be able to see our faces online tonight have come here because you have a special message for them in this moment, that there's something you want to say to them specifically tonight, and I will not try to interpret. I have no idea what it is, but God, I ask that you speak loudly and clearly and let us know of your presence. Let us know that you're walking with us, you hear us, and you want to guide us. We are so thankful for creation. We're thankful for the beauty of the earth. We are really sad and upset about different world events. Some of us are coming here after moments of irritation and rage today at the ignorance of the world. Some of us are coming today after just hustling from morning till night. I know my friends who are here in the back room have gone from school to babysitting or working and barely had time to eat. And so, God, I just want to thank you for every single person who gets to hang out with us tonight and look at what the Bible's about. Look at what Christianity is about. Reveal yourself to us tonight. Amen. Amen. Okay. All right, guys. As I mentioned before, no beasts tonight. I'm so sorry. We will have a couple barnyard animals and we'll get back to the sanctuary for a half second. We also have the zombie apocalypse. We have Jewish wedding traditions. So there will be a smorgasbord of delights for you. So please do not go anywhere. Here's our review previously on the road. Last week we talked about that Matthew 24, the signs that Jesus is coming back soon. His disciples were in Jerusalem asking, what are the signs of your return going to be? And Mark, what were some of those signs? Do you remember a couple off top?
There'd be wars and
Wars.
rumors of war.
Rumors of war.
Earthquake.
Some earthquakes. Got some pestilences.
Yes.
If you're a King James kind of guy. If you're maybe NIV, what does it say? Any idea?
Oh, goodness.
Don't worry about it. Anyway.
Headlights.
Basically, the thing that our book focused on was that, hey, Livius just joined us. Basically, the book focused on one of the main things that was going to happen is that the love of many would grow cold. So society becomes less and less full of love and understanding and compassion and empathy for each other. And so that was one of the big signs. However, we learned that there was going to be a group of people, no matter what, that was persistent in loving one another. So yes, the Christian message shares a whole lot with some of the other religious messages that are the most important thing is love. Christianity says that we can only get that really supernaturally from Jesus, that it's really, really hard to create love in and of yourself. Then we did talk about some beastie things, like I was saying, from Revelation. And we talked about how the U.S. might be in this Bible prophecy story, that the U.S. might actually be an enforcer of that original beast power that was coercive, that tried to make people follow their religion or face death. And we said, yeah, this stuff is weird, and we're not exactly sure what conditions would have to happen for that to go down. But that basically, if this nation founded on freedom ever ends up being oppressive, ever ends up trying to force a certain religion or certain ways on people, you'll know that that is from the beast power. That is not the heart of God speaking. And then our last review slide, we did talk about the mark of that beast power versus the seal of God. And basically, those marks were just talking about, here, I'll put myself on large. Those marks were just saying like, hey, these are identifying things that show who your allegiance to. Are you down with God and his ways of love, or are you following man and man's ways of selfishness? I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to make you do it my way. Or God, which is God's ways, which are other-centered love and freedom. So the book got into more details on that, but we kind of left it surface level, and maybe we did that on purpose. All right. So did anybody want to ask a question before from like last week that we didn't get to? Just how things are arranged tonight. We do get a little bit more leeway for chat and open discussion. So I'm going to ask Zavai and Fiona and Cara if they see anything in the comments we want to highlight.
I have a comment on your love statement, why it's so hard.
Let me put Livius on here. Can someone click Livius so he could be full screen?
I was going to wait for if there was a question.
Okay.
I'll just go. You mentioned that why we needed Jesus, why love is so hard, like we can't achieve it. And the reason for that is that we are selfish creatures. And so Jesus is the only human that overcame self. And that's why we need him, because he's the only human that accomplished that. And that's a fundamental principle of love, is other-centeredness. And it's not in our nature to be that way.
All right. Hey, I appreciate that, Livius. By the way, Livius, I just wanted to let you know you have at least one adoring fan out there. Someone mentioned to me, I like that Livius guy. So, hey, just want to greet Furman and Faith and Doug and those of you who are watching anonymously. We are so glad to have you with us. All right, let me go back to the slides here for you. if you're following along in our book, The Road, we talked about we read about some messages here that that God sends forth in the last days. And if you've been following along with us, you've seen kingdom after kingdom after kingdom kind of going along with this view of God's timeline, his long game we've been talking about. And when we get to the book of Revelation, the guy who's writing it, his name's John, he has visions of the final days on Earth's history, and he has a vision of these angels who come in one after another with different messages. And these have traditionally been things that sound scary, and they really are, warnings. They really are warnings. And so we're going to look at those for just about 5 minutes, and I'm not going to ask you even to read them, but we're just going to review the 3 messages and then have a little bit of discussion for them. If you want to look in your Bible, it's Revelation 14, and it talks about these angels flying and bringing these messages to the earth. Now, I want you guys to remember that when we talk about Bible prophecy, there's a lot of symbolism. And frankly, I really thought that these were angels. Like, I really thought the angels were going to come and say this to the earth when I was young and trying to figure this out. But if you study the Bible quite a bit, you'll see that angels, the word angel is just the word for messenger, and that it ends up that God's people have to be the messengers. The angels aren't doing it. They're not going around whispering in people's ears these things. It's just a representation of the message going out. So I wanted to clear that up before we looked at what they are. Okay, so the first message, if you're following along in your book, this is page 223. An angel comes by with the everlasting gospel. And this angel's message is to fear God and give him glory, and to worship the God that made heaven and earth and the seas. Now, I think we have a little bit of time. I've mentioned it before, but who knows what the everlasting gospel might be? Why would an angel be proclaiming, or why would this message be to proclaim the everlasting gospel? Oh, by the way, Savai, will you put this invite link in the chat so that if we've got people watching at home who want to join the green room, they can? Just go to the little invite person thing. I'll ask Mark, since he's hanging out here with me, what he thinks the gospel is and why the angel is asking us to share the everlasting gospel at the end of Earth's history.
Would it be the good news or the story of Jesus Christ?
Can you hear him?
Jesus did, who Jesus was, how Jesus lived.
Yeah, so gospel is good news, right?
Yes.
Good news about what?
Exactly. What is the good news?
Maybe that. Oh, should I answer my own question?
Yeah, answer your own question.
Well, it's good news about something, and starting in the beginning, in the garden, Adam and Eve were led to believe something false about God's character. So the good news is the good news that God is not like the person that the devil has made him out to be.
I love it. I love your take. Now you see why Livius has a following. And I think, each person is going to put this idea in their own words, but that's basically it. That, we've been talking this whole time about the 2 kingdoms. We've got the kingdom of other-centered love and the kingdom of selfishness. And what the gospel is to me is that the good news is to me is that there is another kingdom, and I have access to it through the life and death of Jesus. And that's what Jesus himself seemed to be teaching about, God's kingdom. He did a lot of parables about it. And so that's the good news. We're not stuck like this for eternity. All the sad things that I was talking about, I've been listening to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict kind of updates. And I'm like, man, like 100 years ago, there was a genocide against the Hebrews there. And like coming up on that 100-year anniversary, 3,000 missiles have, in 11 days have gone and obliterated these people. And that's just one side of the story. Like just so much sadness, so much strife, so many things that we have to deal with. There is a better kingdom where people are going to live the law of love, and we have access to it through Jesus. Like Mark, what do you say at the end of your sermons? If you've got that, you got the sermon, you can preach it yourself next time. If you take nothing else away from the road, and you know that's what the Bible is all about. It's about Jesus and how he makes a way for us, because like Livius was saying, he is the one person who actually lived that life on behalf of humanity. And so when we tell him, I want in, we get to go in. And it seems so simple.
And it's sad, like, if none of us make it, there's still Jesus. He's the only human that survived, basically.
Yeah, it seems like it'd be pretty lonely. I can see why he's rooting for us.
Yeah.
All right. The second message is a little bit more cryptic, I think. And that message is pretty simple. The second angel's message is that Babylon is fallen. Now, I'm going to ask you to tell me what you think Babylon is fallen means, but I'm going to give you a hint. If you've been with us through this whole time, you have studied Daniel chapter 2 and the image of this man made of different metal parts. Do you remember that? So if you remember back to the nation or kingdom that kicked it off, it might give you a clue to what Babylon represents. All right, green room folks, if you see anything on the comments, please speak up, let us know. Pop them up on the screens of I. All right. Hey, Cyrus. I think hope and faith in tomorrow being better is something universal. And I don't know God very well, but I know how to keep my head up and be comforted that tomorrow will be blue. Blue? Oh, like the skies will be blue? Yeah, that's cool. All right. So thinking back to Daniel chapter 2 and the image of the metal man, it represented kingdom after kingdom in the lineup of nations that will kind of rule the earth or be representative of the earth. And since Babylon was first, it could represent the beginning of the kingdom of man, that kingdom of self that we've been talking about. So this second angel's message would be that the kingdom of self and self-reliance, and the kingdoms that, of course, have spread rumors about God and false religion, all of that stuff is fallen. Make way for the new kingdom. And then lastly, we won't beat around the bush with this one. It's pretty simple. The third angel's message is don't get the mark. Don't get the mark of the beast. We studied about that last week. It's whatever mark it is, it shows the allegiance to man's ways, man's kingdom, as opposed to Jesus's ways, Jesus's kingdom, and seeking to follow him wholeheartedly.
Yeah, if I can expand on that, remember it says that we're marked on the hand or on the forehead, right? And so we do the things, we practice the methods of the Satan, of the devil, maybe without thinking, right?
Mhm.
And then on the foreheads, we actually believe his lies. And so behind our forehead is our place of reason. This is where you make all your decision making right back behind here. That's why it's so critical, is that you've decided, you're marked either in thought or in action.
So, Livius, I don't know if you want to take this follow-up question or if we can dish it to Mark. And by the way, I think Marianne is out there somewhere as well. So Marianne, if you're there, say hi, and Zavai will get you the link to jump on. But here's my question. We were looking at the difference between the mark of the beast and the seal of God. And so how come when we talk about the seal of God, all we see mentioned in the Bible is that occurs on the forehead? We don't see anything in the hand for the seal of God. Does anybody out in the audience or Livius or Mark want to take that idea?
I'll wait.
Okay. I'm legit asking. I think I might have heard something about it before, but I didn't know if it was significant or not. I really can't remember.
I think Livius kind of touched on it already, but I don't want to put words in his mouth, so I'll parrot part of what he said, and then I'll let him speak for himself. But I think when you go something in your, as far as the hand, that's kind of going along to get along, or I might not really think this or believe this, but it works for me. So okay. The head, as we said before, we actually believe. But I think when it comes to the seal of God, there's not really.
You can't go along to get along with God.
You're wasting your time. Actually, like that doesn't give you any kind of credit. Like there's no.
Because man looks on the outer works,
yes.
but the Lord looks on the heart, like the Bible says. So you can't just do the actions and be true.
Right. I think you can get part credit in other ways, but as far as when it comes to the mark of the beast or else,
you could be an innocent bystander, or maybe not innocent, but you could be a bystander in the crowd just going along and get the mark of the beast. That's why it's terrifying. That is scary.
Or acquiescing to something that's coercive or whatever else. But I think there's nothing coercive with God, so that would force anything. So I think that's why it's like either you are truly down with God, or it's like, or you're not. And I hate being so stark in that way, because I'm not. But in this case, I that would be my off the top of the hat answer, as far as no, either you're really with it or you're not.
Okay, so it does take contemplation. It does take interest in the ways of God.
That's exactly right.
Okay, all right.
Remember, eternal life is that you might know the one true God and Jesus Christ whom he has sent. And that word know has to do with, it's the same know when it says, and Adam knew Eve and they bore a son.
That's some pretty special knowing right there.
That's some special knowing, right? That's some deep, connected, relational.
That's inappropriate.
Well, but that's what it says. The Bible says that,
I know. I'm actually all about scandalous parts of the Bible.
Yeah.
Or apparently scandalous ones.
Right. They reveal a lot, right? And then Paul says that everyone must be fully convinced in their own mind.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And God does not violate our choice. And so when it's just in the hand, it's no different than keeping the 10 Commandments, because those are just a bunch of rules. Right? Children are used to working with rules. They don't really understand. They don't really know the principle behind brushing their teeth. They don't understand the laws of health, right? So we impose on them a law that they have to brush their teeth morning, noon, and night, right?
Yeah, or they don't get mature stories or whatever.
Yeah, it's when they mature that they understand, oh, I'm eating all this sugar and all this food and whatnot, that I have to actually put some energy into making sure that my teeth don't decay.
Yeah, because nobody wants to hire somebody with no teeth. It is like one of the last isms, the no tooth isms.
Yeah.
It's like, we will judge you. Yeah. So please, children, brush your teeth.
Right. So God's looking for your mind. It's looking for a heart change. That's what the heart is.
All right. Thank you, Livius. Just want to get a little bit more into your opinions, your ideas. There's no right or wrong answer in these discussion questions, but God is good. He's been revealing himself through history, through all these different movements. So why is it, do you guys think, that God is preparing this special message, this special movement to go out near the end of time? And do you think that the order of these angelic messages is important? Do you think any are more important for our world than others? And if you wanted to look again at some of the basics as you answer, the first one was that God's kingdom is available. Come and worship the God who made everything. And the second one is that Babylon, the selfish false systems, are fallen. And then the last one is don't get the mark of the beast. So what is it about? Why do they need to be reiterated, or why at this time? While I think about it, just pop Doug's comment up here. The hand is action and the head is our thoughts. We are saved not by our works, right? Like there's nothing we can do, Doug's saying, but by believing in Christ, and that happens in the mind. That is the good news. Thank you, Doug. All right. Doug is now replying to our question about why the messages. And he says, oops. With God's special message, he wants everyone to know the truth and be saved. Yes. So it seems like a little bit of urgency, and maybe just an extra warning, because he cares and he loves us. All right.
I think even just the sequencing of the first of the three angel message. I mean, the first, like you have it listed as an invitation.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I mean, I don't think you need to see anything, hear or observe anything bad to know that something is good. Like, hey, this is something good. Come do this. There's something great that's on the horizon.
You didn't need to eat poop first to know that chocolate was tasty? Is that what you're saying?
Not how I would have said it, but sure. Absolutely. But no, really. Yeah. But the second one is just matter of fact. It's just a statement of fact. Babylon is fallen.
Okay.
The last one is like you said, it gets more urgent. But I think if you go in the reverse, if you start with don't do this, it just seems like a bit like, well, why not do this?
Mm-hmm.
And then, I mean, and so, and not that God wouldn't have an answer, but I think that even the sequencing of it, I would say it is important as far as people that have shown themselves to be in rebellion or to question God or whatever else. It's like, okay, then if we start off with the negative as far as what not to do, as opposed to what we are being invited into, I think there's a natural pushback that we as humans have shown that we are capable of.
Yeah.
As opposed to, look, like I said, something good, something that's just a statement of fact, and something like, come on, guys, like we see where this leads. Don't go down that road again. So, okay, I'll just say this before we move on to the next question, final question of this section is, the book mentioned that the author believes we're in the first angel's message. I've seen people say that, no, we're supposed to be talking about the second one right now, how this false system, this selfishness. And I've heard people say, oh my goodness, now that I know what the mark of the beast is, I'm going to be telling everybody it's not Barack Obama, so I've heard all different things, all different people. Are there specific phases, do you think? Or is it just like, here are the important last day items, go out and tackle these, and different people have different, interests, and they can be preached simultaneously? Or who cares? I don't know. It just was something that came up in my mind while I was reading. I think so much of Revelation is, how did I say this? I'll say simultaneously. You're fine with it? It doesn't matter? I'm okay with things being preached simultaneously. I think if we get too caught up into
Which phase?
yeah,
Yeah.
I think each can be relevant. I mean, I think the first angel's message. I mean, personally, I think that will forever be relevant.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
I don't
Good
know
call.
that I have an issue preaching them simultaneously when we look at how many things in Revelation are not literal and how many things,
Mhm.
and then trying to guess, well, does this mean that? Or try, yeah, I think,
Yeah, like when does the second phase start? Who's gonna, do the little bang bang to let me know? I see what you're saying.
I think the devil distracts us though to do that, to like nitpick and pick something, and then we hold on to it and just develop a whole conspiracy theory around it.
Yeah, I love those.
You
Get
know?
after it.
Right? So it's fascinating how the devil uses all these things to distract us. But the overarching point is that God is in control, and God wins in the end. That's the overarching. That's the plot. That's the theme.
Yeah, love wins.
Yeah, right. So as long as we remember that, that kind of
Right.
gets us centered, pointed.
We might skip this unless someone's hot on it. I flashed it up before, but part of that, if you read the Bible and you read this, what will happen to the wicked who do accept the mark? They're going along to get along, and they think, oh, I don't really want to stand up for what I believe and it'll be fine. Well, they end up meeting this pretty, sad demise, which we are going to talk a little bit more about next week. What does it mean to burn in hell? But that's
fires next week.
Yeah, the fire's next week, which
Excellent.
It ends well. Yes. Just so everyone who's listening knows, this is not your typical, we think you burn forever and ever kind of lesson. It's actually pretty cool. So that's my trailer for next week. But, when you read this stuff, it kind of makes you cringe anyway. It talks about God's wrath being poured out full strength on people who take this mark. And
how many
make you feel?
Yeah, how many of us have not? I mean, I don't want to speak for those that are childless, but how many of us parents have overstated consequences and just gone, and I remember my parents doing that too.
They tell you Santa wasn't going to come if you
no, but like really made something like sound like really bad, like the world's going to end if you do it, or whatever the situation may be. And I think that maybe we're in that camp.
It's going to be bad. Okay, so it might be slightly hyperbolic. We might be using, not that it's not going to be bad, but like it's strong language just to send a warning, not to really be gruesome or whatever.
Yeah, if your kid's running out on the street, you yell and at the top of your lungs, and
depends
if someone,
on which kid.
Yeah, that's right. Let him go.
That's better this way. I only make jokes because I'm watching the people in the green room smile, and it makes my day. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Livius. Okay. This next section, you're if you're following along, you're on 230 and 231. Here's the cool thing. Oh shoot. I hear people practicing in the church sanctuary, and you guys are gonna have to hear it now. I know. Can you hear it?
It's okay as long as we keep talking.
Okay. Let's keep talking. Fill the space. All right. This was life-changing for me. I think this particularly speaks to, well, I hope it speaks to men, but it definitely spoke to my heart as a woman. When I realized that a whole lot of the Jesus story, him coming back for us, had to do with a lot of Jewish wedding tradition, Hebrew wedding ceremony. That was so cool. And so this chapter just goes into a little bit about that. I don't know if we can make it like item for item match up, but I wanted to bring up these things because it's what I named the this section off of, and it's all about the return of Jesus. So In ancient Hebrew customs, you guys have heard the word betrothed before, and a betrothal or betrothal, however you say it, is very similar to our engagement, not quite as heavy, but it was an agreement, and the parties did sign a covenant. You could not get out of it without some legal ramifications, so it was really important. And this was sealed with a cup of wine, more than a handshake deal. The families decided, yes, my gal is going to marry your guy, and we're in this. And then the gentleman would go back to his father's home, and he would usually add on a partition, a room, like a second little house to what his father's family already had going on, and he would make it a great living space for starting his family. And he didn't ever know exactly when that was going to be done, construction, materials, all this stuff. And he would check in with his dad. Hey, Dad, is this good enough? You're married, And the father would be like, yeah, it's time. Go get your bride. And then he would go. They would have this big parade, big ceremony, go back to the house. And as we've already started being racy in this topic, we can be a little racy now and say, they would consummate the marriage. And so there's this process. We see these different parts of what it took to go from engaged couple to happily married couple. And the Bible is full of language like that when it talks about Jesus making a covenant with his people. We saw that when we were talking about Daniel's prophecy. Jesus comes back and makes the covenant. He is living among us, and he makes the deal, and then supposedly, according to custom, he's going to come back and get his bride and go on the big parade back to heaven, and then live together happily. So that's kind of like the nutshell version of chapter 5, the return. So just kind of wrapping your head around what that means, what that looks like, how rich and full of tradition it is pretty cool. A couple questions for those of you, especially who read the chapter, thought about, contemplated this before. What does the idea of Jesus' soon return do? That's supposed to say, do for your heart. And then how does that affect your daily life as well? We'd love to take some ideas, some comments on this correlation between the Hebrew wedding customs and Jesus coming back. He's already made the covenant. He's gone to prepare a place for us. And now he is going to come and take his bride home. Is that cool? What do you guys think? Hi, Flying Doc. Who are you? Now I'm curious. Who do I know who's a pilot and a doctor in Kettering? Got me pondering.
Take it offline.
Olivia's with the sass. All right. Well, if you guys don't like that one, let's move on to the next one.
Okay, wait. So
no, you want it. Okay.
Well, I was just going to add another comment to the principle of love, and that is, and covenant. You mentioned covenant, but I don't know if you realize that the love in the Bible is covenant, because love is other-centered, and you need others for true love to exist, because it's not a selfish. People say,
can't exist if you're alone. You cannot.
Yeah. Hate is not the opposite of love. It's selfishness.
Yeah.
That's the opposite of love. And so covenant is love. Love is a covenantal principle, idea. It's built into the fabric of the universe. It's, that's God is love. And so he naturally is in relationship with, of course, the Godhead, but with his entire creation, right? And so that is by its very nature a covenant. That's why, covenant is such a big thing in the Bible.
Yes.
Right. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Thank you so much, Livius. All right. And, this has done so much for my heart and my understanding of God, who he is, that he's not neglecting us, that he is coming back for us, that this waiting game, even though everyone says, where's your God? You guys have been talking about him coming back for, centuries. And, that's another question for another time. But when somebody loves you, it doesn't matter how long you're waiting. You have people in prison cells knowing that somebody's working for their release. It helps keep them sane and healthy and, happy despite their conditions. And that's what this story has done for my heart. That's just a little bit of my testimony. So, all right, let's go to our last. Oh, wait, we had one more. Oh, yeah. In the light of God's coming kingdom, how can we actively fight evil and suffering while we wait? Share what ideas get you going. This is just kind of like, what do you feel your call in the earth is to do some of this stuff, to talk about this kingdom of love? Now when we know he's coming back, we don't just sit here and do nothing. It's not a passive thing for the Christian individual or the Christian church. So somebody out there wants to tell me how they are inspired to live out the kingdom of love even while they're waiting. I want the brainstorm. Mark, what did you do today to live out the kingdom of love here on earth?
Along with some of my closest friends right up here in Sunnyvale.
It wasn't me today. I didn't come up here.
Most other days.
Most other days, yeah.
But no, we just wanted to meet people's needs on a practical level, and we served food, and we provided a practical need for what is
Can you hear Mark?
A crisis for a lot of people in the Bay Area. So handing out groceries, smiles, and then offering other services as well.
Yeah, thank you. We've got 2 people in our back room who helped that. Benjamin Hummel. Hello, Benjamin. Ben says, we can continue to manifest the fruits of the Spirit, to be kind to those around us, to bring love, joy, and peace. I like to get people Nerf guns. I have played Nerf gun with you. That's true. There's some things that may seem like less weighty, but still bring joy, and healing, just listening to people. So, yes, would love to hear some of those other ideas. Sending cards. Have you ever gotten a card when you were down and you just needed that day? So
I've gotten cards when I was fine, and I found out I needed it that day, to be honest.
Mark likes to get Snickers as well, so giving candy out, etc. But yeah, pop those up on the screen, guys, as they come in. All right. Moving on to the final chapter for this evening. You would think that once God comes and gets his bride and they go away to heaven, if you were writing the story, you would probably say, and they lived
happily ever after.
Happily ever after. Amen. This is kind of what happens, but before the happily ever after, amen, there's a couple other things that we're going to talk about. And the first is you might have heard this, but when Jesus comes back and retrieves his people, they spend 1,000 years in heaven. What do they call that, Mark?
The millennium.
The millennium. So that's what this chapter is about, chapter 6. And you can turn there with me. It's on page 238. The millennium is not necessarily the happily ever after story, though. It's 1,000 years of due diligence that God's people get to do. And I put a scene here of a courtroom because it's a little bit like judicial review. Do you guys know what judicial review is? I feel like if you've been in 8th grade, you might have had a civics class. Do they talk about that in civics? I don't know. Anyway, judicial review is actually kind of a hierarchical thing where after things have gone through the court system, the higher courts look at it and say, hey, did we follow our principles? Did we do what we did right? And I don't know if you have ever heard this. This kind of blew my mind. But when we get to heaven, we get to take part in kind of a judicial review. Is that how you understand it?
That is, yeah.
Yeah. The Bible talks about the saints, the people who are saved, sharing in judgment, sitting on the throne, which is representative of God's government, and looking through the books of people's life's history, looking through all these empires, these kingdoms that we've been talking about, and saying whether or not God has been shown to be just and true in each of them. And we get to do that. Why? Why do humans get to take part in that for 1,000 years? Livius, what you got?
Well, we're just double checking to make sure that God made the right choice. We're actually judging God's action.
Yes. How cool is that?
Very cool. What God of the Old Testament do you know that allows that kind of stuff?
Oh, what do you mean? Are you setting us up for something?
No, I mean, it's just a contrast of gods, our gods.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that's something I wanted to bring up because it's a little bit different in Christianity than it is in other religions. I have never heard a story about a God who is willing to submit himself to the judgment of humans.
Yeah.
That is incredible. So every time we say something like God's not fair or he's arbitrary or, I've heard so many of my friends who cannot believe or don't believe say things like that. But when I'm able to show them that God himself will submit to our judgment, that can be a game changer. That can help us talk about Christianity in a different way. So that's something fun for you. If if you've never heard this before, it's definitely something to ponder. Like Livia said, what kind of God of the Old Testament, what kind of God, period, would say, you know what? Not only do I want to be with you and send my son Jesus to live among you and submit himself to the rigors of human life, but even after that, we are going to submit ourselves to your inquiry, your inquisition. You make sure that we are towing the line, that we're truly holy and good and loving like we say we are. That is a wild concept, right?
What God says, shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do?
Oh.
Right? I mean, he's fully that idea alone. I mean, that speaks volumes about the type of character that God has, where he includes us in the conversation.
Livius, tell us what chapter of Genesis that's in case we want to look it up.
I have to Google it.
Okay.
But give me a second, I'll tell you.
Well, you can type it in, or we can come back around to it.
Yeah,
but
I'll type it in. We
know how to Google. All right. So here's how the story continues after the 1,000 years of judgment, where, hopefully we find that God ends up being the good guy he says he is. Still not the end of the story. Something really wild happens. This is the zombie apocalypse, I promised you, because as we know, God has created we'll be creating a new earth for us. And there is a city the Bible refers to as the New Jerusalem. And apparently the New Jerusalem, with us, the saints in it, and God and whoever else wants to come along for the ride, at some point, this little big cube, I guess it's about the size of Australia or something like that, a good chunk of Australia, right? I don't know. Anyway, it starts descending from the heavens. And at this point, you remember the Satan, the adversary? Well, he's been bound on the earth with all the humans who did not go to heaven, have passed away. He's been bound on the earth with nobody to harass, no one to tempt, just sitting there in demonic time out until the time where he is loosed from his prison. Not a literal one, we don't believe, but he's loosed from his prison because now is the time of the second resurrection, which we don't really want to be a part of. The second resurrection is saved for those who passed away because of the brightness of God's coming, or who died a natural death on earth. At this point, they are raised from the dead to behold with their own eyes the holy city coming down. And Satan, because it has now become his nature and he knows no other way, goes about trying to gather people up, rallying the troops for one last stand against the Creator God. And he gets them together, and they are rallying as the New Jerusalem comes down. Everybody's giving it their best. They're assembling armies. And by the way, because we don't believe that they have been restored to perfect health and life because they're not in Jesus, what do you think they look like? Mark, have you imagined this before?
Honestly, I wouldn't even want, like...
It's so exciting. I really think this is where the concept of the zombie apocalypse came from. I have a little sample here for you, for your delights. Anyway, I know this sounds wild and far-fetched, as we talk about many things in the Bible do, but if God has the power of life, and if knowing him is having life, then those who have rejected him when they're raised from the dead, I don't think they have access to that life. So whatever way they went down into the grave, whether it was, whatever thing happened to them in life, they probably still got those stab wounds. They probably still have those skin disorders. I don't actually know. Anyway, this of course is my imagination, but they rally and they try to attack the kingdom of God one more time, at which point, remember we talked about how good God is and how evil cannot exist in the presence of a holy God. God's holiness, unadulterated, when they behold that, they actually end up burning up. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about next week. More details about what hell is, why it's not an eternal punishment, an eternal punishing, but an eternal punishment. We'll get into some of those details. But right now, all you need to know is that this is how the wicked and sin is finally destroyed for good. I hope we cover this next week, but I also wanted to let you know there's a detail in the Bible that makes this more okay for me. And that is that the doors of this city never close. Revelation 21:25 specifically says that the doors are open all day. And by the way, there is no night in the city because God's presence makes it eternal day. Yes, you can nap. You won't need to, but you can nap. But here's the cool thing about that. At any time that somebody wants to approach and come into this city, acknowledging that they themselves need Jesus, they weren't perfect, they didn't live other-centered love. And I believe, this is controversial, I believe even the Satan himself could have forgiveness up until this very last second. That anyone who saw that they could not make it without the love of God, anyone could ask forgiveness at any time until God finally reveals his glory and they burn up. Anytime. They can walk right in. And God has been offering this freely for his whole existence and our whole existence. But now, because they have turned their hearts and minds against God, they are trying to take by force the city, which God has been offering freely from the beginning. And I believe this tiny detail is in the Bible to help people with rebellious minds like mine understand that absolutely the whole time God is open for the business of salvation up into the very last nanosecond.
Instead of coming in, they build implements of war.
Yeah, it breaks my heart. I'm sure it breaks God's heart.
Yeah.
So in our last couple of minutes, there's one more thing that needs a solution. And that's going to take us back to the sanctuary. In your book, I forgot what page it is. but it's in that chapter. On page 243, the road walks us through kind of what happens in the sanctuary. This is a bird's eye view. You've got the outer walls there, and then that inner rectangle is the holy place, and then the most holy place where you see that crown. And we've talked about this 3 or 4 times. This is a big theme of the Bible, the sanctuary, and how God made a way for us to dwell, for him to dwell among us, even while in the presence of sin. And we talk about, we'll just run through. A is when the sinner brings a lamb into the sanctuary. And of course, we know that the lamb without blemish represents Jesus. And then if you look at part B, that's representative of the priest killing the lamb and taking the blood inside. The priest also represents Jesus, who intercedes for us. Remember, we talk about that priest. That priest is demonstrating how Jesus has represented us to the Father and made intercession with his blood. See, there's a laver, a place to wash hands and feet, and the priest washes himself before going in. That's what that little water droplet represents. Jesus is our spotless representative, of course. If you look at item D, inside the holy place, the priest presents the blood before that veil. E is the veil. And then once a year, this is the part we haven't really talked about. E, where that little arrow goes through the dotted line, E is showing us that one time a year, the priest goes behind that veil into the most holy place. And we talked about this when we discovered that the year 1844 is when we think the sanctuary started to be cleansed, meaning that the final judgment, looking at the nations and kingdoms and people of the earth, started to be judged. And then if you look up in the right-hand corner, you'll see God's goat and the word scapegoat. Sorry, I couldn't find any better image of this online, so I had to take a picture right from the book. But the scapegoat is the thing that we hadn't really talked about. And I just want to leave you with this because it's kind of coming full circle, where we talked about God dwelling with us, and now we're talking about God getting rid of sin once and for all. And so what would happen is that this one time a year, instead of offering lambs, the priest would, of course, make sacrifice for himself, but we're talking about this sacrifice for the people. So the priest would go and grab 2 goats, and one would act as a sin offering, taking away the sins of the people. But the second one is so curious, and you'll find all different kinds of Bible scholars with different commentaries on this. But it ends up that the second goat cannot represent Jesus. The sin's already taken care of. Salvation is set in this story. And what happens is this goat is called a scapegoat. It's somebody's job to run the goat out into the wilderness so that it never returns. And we believe that this is representative of sin being gotten rid of once and for all, leaving the camp never to return. Now, here's the funny part. In real life, that goat could have come back. And imagine how embarrassed you'd be if it was like your one job, Mark, was to take the goat on a leash and get him as far out as you could. And you failed. And the goat is now back eating my garden. But that's because this system was never actually meant to save us or to get rid of sin. It was meant to demonstrate the cost of sin, the messiness of sin, and how God will get rid of sin once and for all. So that's the scapegoat story. All right, guys. Any questions so far? Fiona, Cara, let me know if there's some comments that need to be read or questions. All right, Doug said, oh, were you going to say something? I was just going to read this one.
Yeah, I was just going to mention Rhonda's question. They asked, what are those implements, referring to the implements that you mentioned that the people on Earth would be making. They asked, do we know, is it a physical battle or is it a mental/heart battle?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know that the Bible is clear on it. We could go and look and see, we've talked about this war in heaven and how the word for that is polemos, and that always lets us know if it's like kind of a war of ideas or if it's a real war. I can't imagine them rallying for discussion at that point. I say, good sir, would you like a cup of tea while we discuss how to break down the New Jerusalem? I can't see that. I can only see their angry gut reactions, but what do I know? That's my imagination. Maybe Mark knows things.
Mark does know things, but Mark does not know this thing. No. I mean, I think it's a great question, but honestly, I actually go the other way.
You think it was War of Ideas? He likes politics, that's why.
But I can't imagine. It would, after 1,000 years of investigating God's character, I can't imagine them thinking that there's anything that could be said that would allow them to change anybody's mind or overtake something. So I see what you're saying, but I also can't imagine anybody being so silly as to think I'm going to.
Let's sharpen these sticks and throw them at the guy.
But you've seen people in state, do things that are very silly, that make no sense, because, of a sinful world or a fallen world. Like, people do things that make no sense all the time.
Anger and writing doesn't make much sense to me either.
You never received an angry letter?
What?
An angry letter or an angry email? You've never received that?
Received it? Yes. On Ask a Christian, I receive them all the time.
No, so anger and writing sometimes do go together.
Okay.
But no, I'm with you. No, actually.
No, I want to know. Thank you, Rhonda. Let's, I'm going to give you your own homework. I sure hope you figure it out before next week.
You want to know now?
No, Livius, we want to have suspense. Yes.
Okay.
No, tell us. What do you know?
Well, it says here in Revelation 20, after the 1,000 years were ended, verse 7, Satan will be released from his prison and will come out to deceive the nations that are at the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them for battle. The word for battle in the Greek is polemos.
It is the same one.
And they marched up in the broad plain of the earth and surrounded the camp of the saints and the beloved city. But fire came down from heaven and consumed them.
All right, so it is polemos. So it's the same root that we've talking about, the war of ideas or the war of government. Well, now you make me rethink my life. Anyway, just so you guys know, we're authentic. We're doing this stuff along with you. We don't know everything. We don't try to know everything. We just want to talk about how cool God is.
Awesome.
Also, I think Mark curls his eyelashes. I just saw them up close for the first time. Guys, all right, we're out of time. Let me pick one question for you. I had like 3 or 4, but we've had so much fun. What do you think will change about humanity? What's going to change in us when Satan's kingdom of selfishness is finally destroyed? Get a little musical interlude.
Well, I think our carnal nature will be destroyed.
Interesting. When Satan is okay, so his kingdom, you're saying, is destroyed when Jesus returns.
Well, yeah, that's when Jesus returns, but
yeah.
So that's when Jesus returns. So maybe it's not exactly when Satan is destroyed, but it's all part of the same thing.
It's falling. Yeah, it's crumbling. When Jesus returns, he's got no chance. So I'm with you. I count that. What else did I put? Oh, shoot. This is the one I really wanted to know. During the 1,000 years in heaven, for that, where we get to share the judgment with Jesus, what personal and historical questions will you ask God? Leave me a comment. That's good thinking. You don't even have to answer It's really as much for you as it is for me to know, but of course I am curious. There's some things that some he said, she said, or she said, she said on this earth that I have written in my journal to ask God. Like, I really do want to know who was telling the truth. And it's so cool that everything will be laid bare for us.
Yeah, what's cool is, you read Daniel, like Revelation, and you hear about these people. They were given visions and dreams. And what's awesome, and they wrote about them, right? And we read them and study them today. But what's so cool is that, God lives outside of time. And so that's why he's the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. Like, he sees time as looking at a piece of paper, as a line on a piece of paper. He just sees your whole life in front of you. It's a mind-boggling principle to think about. But because he lives outside of time, he actually can take you any point in history, in the history of this earth, with a vision, I don't know, a big mural, of a video replay, rewind.
Yes.
I'm just so excited just to like try to understand what happened, why, pinpoint, genealogy is huge in the Bible, but you'll be able to pinpoint like where things went wrong in this generation, with that generation, your line,
Yeah.
It's going to be so unbelievably cool.
Wow. That's big, Luis. I appreciate that. Yeah, there's a lot of mysteries we have in our own lives, and those will finally be put to rest. Was it really to my benefit, God, that this and this happened? Or, people have had to deal with heartbreak, loss of somebody. Like, God, really, where was the good in this? Show me. And I think that he'll be able to reveal that stuff to us. That maybe God let people pass away when it seemed like it wasn't their time, because that was the time of comfort, or the time where they were sure in their salvation. And, why did somebody break your heart? And why didn't you get this job? And, stuff like that will probably seem fairly small, but I promise, we talk about being petty. Like, we got some petty questions for you, God.
We have 1,000 years to ask all the questions. I think with 1,000 years, some petty questions can't come up.
Yeah. Hello.
And you realize that no one is really dead, right? Right. If there's two resurrections in the end, this death that we experience is just temporary.
Yeah. So temporary sleep. Hey, thank you so much, Livius. That's a great segue. We're going to talk about mortality. What is humanity made of? What is death? What is the death experience like? We're going to talk about that next week and more. So thank you again so much for joining us. If you've got questions on this lesson for me or for Mark, who is much more learned than I am, but less chatty, you can email me at askachristianfriend@gmail.com. And I'll log on a couple minutes ahead of time, too, if there's anyone that we can talk about next week. Again, thank you to Zavai and Cara and Fiona, Livius, Doug, Rhonda, Faith, everybody I see out there, the collapse. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us tonight. We know you got plenty of stuff to do. Thanks for making God and his kingdom a priority and learning along with us. We really enjoy you. So we're wishing you joy and peace for your journey, wherever it leads, and we'll see you next week for our final episode. Bye.